The NBA draft early entry list came out on Tuesday, and how about this, Coach Rob? RJ Davis's name was definitively not on it. And by the way, folks, I owe you all an apology.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Wednesday, May 1st, 2024. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, and you are joining us at the place to get your Tar Heels content every single day. Thanks for making us your first listen or watch. Special shout out to all you everydayers out there, and a big welcome to all the members of the Locked On Tar Heels Discord community. This episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I've got a competitive side, and that side of me is a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends, download Monopoly Go now free on the App Store or Google Play. Special treat, usually Coach Rob joins us on Thursday, but it's a Wednesday show and he is here fresh off of 2 softball games where he definitively did not rupture his Achilles as he previously did. For those who don't know Coach Rob, if you're new to the show, he is the head coach of the Milligan University Buffaloes basketball team and is thick in the midst of a bunch of his own recruiting stuff. Has a fun trip coming up this weekend to Kentucky. We'll let him tell you a little bit about that this weekend, which actually has nothing to do with recruiting, but it does have a lot to do with mint juleps and big hats. So we'll get there in a little bit. Coming up on the show today, though, Cliff Omoruyi is visiting North Carolina tomorrow. That's big time news. We also are going to play a game of what if. What if North Carolina lands Thiero or lands Cliff Omoruyi and Adou Thiero? We're going to unpack that. But Coach, where we want to start with today is kind of looking at this early entry list that came out from the NBA on Tuesday. Basically, for those who are unaware what this list is it's a documented list of every early entrant that has submitted paperwork to the NBA to go through the NBA draft process. So we're going to go there. But where I want to get to first, Coach, is look, today is the last day of the transfer portal. Some people say, finally. I say, yeah, finally, because life is crazy keeping up with it all right now. But I love the rush of it. I love how crazy it is for all of our content. But it is, Coach, here at the end of it. So that's why we've been keeping all these daily updates on all this player movement coming, because it's always changing and there's literally new news every day. So folks, just keep in mind that some of this news will slow down because the early entry deadline is now passed. That was this weekend. And as I said, the transfer portal closes today. So there should not be any more entering the portal. And that closes for both undergrad and graduate students. However, keep in mind that transfers can still and will still commit elsewhere. It's just that they have to be in by today. The only group that has a different option is those whose coaches have changed, and then they have a 30-day window. But I don't expect we'll see any more movement in this cycle. So, Coach, before we talk about that early entry draft list and RJ and Adou Thiero, just looking at it from a coach's standpoint, how exhausting does this transfer portal season have to be for these guys?
Oh, this is the date they've been waiting for, because they can finally, get to the point where there's no new news. They know the list. They know who's going to be going or who's at least in the portal. It's exhausting. I got a buddy who's in the mix of it right now, and he's just tired of it. He just wants it to be over. And recruiting never ends normally, but now there is no breaks whatsoever for these coaches, none. And even when you get everything you think it's set, you're still constantly recruiting the guys on your campus, on your team. It never does end. So this is a day they've had marked on their calendar for a long time. They're ready for this to end.
I bet so. Well, I think we're going to have more conversations about that this offseason, continuing to look at what that means. Will the NCAA revisit shifting it back so that coaches aren't having to do transfer portal and NCAA tournament at the same time? All of those kind of conversations, Coach. We'll definitely talk more about that. But look, here's a question, or as we look at this early entry list, one of the interesting things is that it's almost as notable to look at who is on the list or excuse me, almost as notable to look at who is not on the list as who is on the list. Now, there were a couple of mistakes actually that cropped up on the list, because one of the things people started noticing quickly was Caleb Love, for example, was not listed, although he had declared for the draft. Hunter Salas out of Wake Forest was not on the list, though he had declared. So a lot of people said, whoa, hold up, why aren't these guys on there? And it turned out it was actually an administrative error, that the paperwork had been filed and that those guys actually should be on the list. But interestingly, a couple of guys more in the Carolina circle right now that were not on the list are a young man by the name of RJ Davis and a young man transferring out of Kentucky by the name of Adou Thiero. Coach, let's take those one at a time. With RJ Davis, we obviously had all the reporting last week from CBS, Field of 68, that RJ Davis was in fact planning to return to school. Now, I had been saying that RJ, as somebody who was a senior, did not need to make an early entry declaration. Coach, I've actually seen on Tuesday, I saw some potential verbiage as well as this early entry deadline list that makes me think I've actually been wrong in what I've been saying. And so because of that, I want to apologize, because folks, I hope you know and trust and understand, I do all the research I can. I scour notes. I read boring NCAA regulation books so that I know everything I can. But I saw some new verbiage on this on Tuesday that basically, rather than saying, four-year players are automatically able, the language basically says anybody who has exhausted their NCAA eligibility doesn't have to declare they're automatic, but anyone who still has NCAA eligibility would need to declare. And also, here's the other thing, Coach, as we looked at this early entry list, there were other seniors on it, similar to RJ Davis. So that leads me to believe I was actually wrong in what I said about this. So again, folks, I apologize for that, if indeed it turns out I was wrong. But here's what matters. RJ Davis was not on that list. So it's, while we still wait for an official announcement from him and or North Carolina, it's yet another sign of good news that RJ Davis will be back because he wasn't on that list. Coach, what do you make of all that?
Yeah, it's kind of odd to think that he hasn't made some kind of formal announcement yet, or the team hasn't. But in each timing, it's got to be for each guy. They've got to have their own timing to be able to do it their way. So for whatever reason, we need to respect that. But I think it is a good sign. I would firmly expect him to be back and be the leader and be part of what's going to happen next year. But I would love to get it stamped and approved and know he's definitely coming back. I'd love to hear it from his either his voice or from the Carolina staff.
Yeah, 100% with that, Coach. And like somebody put a commented on one of our YouTube videos this week, like, this podcast host, meaning me, Isaac, has been saying that RJ isn't officially back, but I'm hearing all this reporting that he is. Somebody clear this up for me. And my response back was, actually, both of these things are true. The reporting seems to be all true. It's well sourced. We believe it. I'm just simply stating there has been no statement from the university or the athletics department or the basketball team, and there's been no statement from RJ. So both are true, but I'm with you. We need that rubber stamping from the horse's mouth, Coach, before we can take it to the bank. Now, the other thing is North Carolina has been in pursuit of a power forward, albeit probably more of a small ball power forward, to replace Harrison Ingram, who we fully expect to stay in the draft. If he came back, great, we'd love it and we'd take it. But Coach, the name that we've heard Carolina hotly pursuing is Adou Thiero. Again, folks, for those who haven't been keeping up, Adou Thiero just finished his sophomore year at Kentucky, down to a Final Five of Kentucky, Arkansas. Arkansas, by the way, has been cleaning up in the transfer portal last couple of days. Indiana, and then his hometown Pittsburgh Panthers and the Tar Heels. And so, Coach, we had heard that Thiero was going to be going through the NBA draft process, and so it would probably be a bit of a waiting period to find out more about Thiero and what he wants to do, all of this kind of stuff. But similar to RJ Davis, his name was not on this list. And from every, whereas we saw with Caleb Love that it was a clerical error, I saw nothing of that sort about Adou Thiero. So, Coach, what would you expect in terms of Carolina getting him on campus, doing some other things? We know that Coach Davis went to see him in Lexington last week. all of that. What do you make of Thiero's name not being on that list?
Well, it wasn't just Coach Davis, but I think, Coach Frederick was there. I think Coach Lebo was there.
And Sean
Sean was there too. I mean, when you take the staff, like that's, hey, we need you. We need to send the big guns. We're going to take everybody. And when you do that, it's obviously it's a pretty strong move. You're playing all your aces at one time. The fact that they went through that process and he's still coming to visit, to me, is a great sign. They still got some pretty big pieces out there, some other schools that he's interested in. But I do think it's a really good sign that they spent all that time and interest in him, and he still agreed to come down and visit. So, I think they're doing everything they can to possibly can to get him.
Okay. Well, we'll keep our eyes on this as well. Now, speaking of visits, Coach, here's one of the great pieces. Cliff Omoruyi has been in Tuscaloosa early part of this week, and we got confirmation on Tuesday that despite some fears that Alabama might lock him up on the spot, he's still visiting Chapel Hill starting tomorrow. More on that in just a second. Right after I tell you about FanDuel, it's playoff time in the NBA and the NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. You can bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Coach Rob, how about some national championship odds for next year's Final Four? Kansas plus 1,000, UConn plus 1,100, Duke plus 1,200. Interestingly enough, Alabama and Carolina tied at plus 1,600, and Houston rounds out that top six at plus 1,800. So what are you waiting for, gang? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. I mentioned on yesterday's show that Jonas Adou, the Tennessee transfer, has committed to Arkansas, and that, at least for who Carolina is pursuing now, leaves the Tar Heels with just Cliff Omoruyi, the Rutgers transfer, at the center position. As you probably well know, he had been visiting Alabama earlier this week, and there was a bunch of consternation amongst all of us because it's like, oh man, they're going to grab him while he's there. One of their assistant coaches is tweeting all these pictures of Clifford the Big Red Dog in Alabama hats. It's a whole thing. And so there's a lot of worry like, oh, maybe he's not going to visit Carolina. After all, Alabama's going to lock him up while he's there. And the good news is that that did not happen, Coach, because on Tuesday, Cliff Omoruyi confirmed to On3 through Joe Tipton that he is indeed still visiting Chapel Hill this week. Speaking of visits to Chapel Hill, let me just clarify and clear up one thing. Coach mentioned in the last segment about Adou Thiero visiting Chapel Hill. We actually don't know anything about a visit as of this point. I would expect if things continue the way they are, that will happen. But that was just like, there's so much information out there that it was just like, got to clear that up. So for those of you that are like, wait, he's visiting, there is no know that yet. So as we often do, we just want to make sure we correct things when we misspeak. So to say that. Now, Coach, all you can ask for in the transfer portal era with guys that you're pursuing is a chance, a visit, an opportunity. And that's where I was at with this. Like with Omoruyi being in Tuscaloosa, my thing on Tuesday was no news is good news, right? Like if it's all quiet on the Tuscaloosan front, then that's good news that Cliff Omoruyi would still be coming to North Carolina. And so critically, Coach, what I think about this is that there for a while, for example, there's been an Armando Bacot tweet circulating around from, I think it was last offseason. Don't come to North Carolina unless you want to commit, because if you come, you're going to commit. And so, Coach, let me just ask you this. How big is it for North Carolina to be able to get him out of Tuscaloosa and still get this visit starting tomorrow on Thursday?
It's huge. And when you have facilities like Carolina has and people like they have in a town, it's a great college town. You just got to get them there. You got to get them to see all the Carolina blue inside the Smith Center. You've got to get them to meet people. And everybody from the coaches to the trainers to the staff to professors, to anybody, even down to Doug, the trainer. I mean, everybody they're just such great people. And if you can get them on campus and get them to interact in that personal relationship that you have with these people, and then get to walk down Franklin Street, I mean, place sells itself, but of course the staff does a great job of selling it too. So just getting them on campus is absolutely huge.
Man, okay. And Coach, here's another wrinkle in this, which, by the way, I forgot I was going to say, in terms of other targets, this is somebody that we've heard no connection with for Carolina, but another center off the board on Tuesday, Brandon Garrison, the Oklahoma State transfer who has 3 years of eligibility, committed to Kentucky on Tuesday. Again, we have no record of Carolina having connection with him. I'm just saying that because he's another center that's out and off the board from the transfer portal. Now, Coach, another key and critical part of this Cliff Omoruyi recruiting cycle is that he's been to Georgetown, he's been to Kansas State, he's been to Alabama, and he told Joe Tipton of On3 Sports that Carolina will be his last visit. Coach, I love batting cleanup here. I think it's a great opportunity to bring it home, slam the door shut, but I also recognize there's times when maybe he heard what he wanted to hear at Alabama and is still just keeping this out of a courtesy. But it feels to me like in the transfer portal era, if a guy's going to be like that, he would just cancel his North Carolina visit and not even come. So, Coach, my question to you is, where do you like to be in in a recruit's visit cycle?
It's very complicated because you look at Stojakovic, he made his first visit, liked it, committed on the spot. We had a kid a couple years ago. We 100% told 100% he was going to come visit, went to another place, committed on the spot. When you have the opportunity to, like you said, to bat cleanup, to have that opportunity to last, I think if it can be a huge benefit as well. You're the last campus he's been on. You're the last things in his memory. So I think, I think it's a good thing for Carolina for Cliff to be the last time to come. We've also had guys who've committed and said, well, you were the first person to talk to me. You're the first place to offer me. You're the first campus I was on. So that's why I committed to you guys. So it really depends on the person. But in this case, I feel good about being the last one because he's made it very clear that this is very important for him to be able to get on campus and visit the Heels.
And I'm with you, Cole. I love that he's taken his time with it. This, to me, shows the emotional maturity of a young man who's been around school for a while, who came to America from a different country and has traveled the world somewhere, right? Like, it's just a different level of understanding of life, basically, right? And I know we think about these guys as robots, but the humanity has to come into it. Sometimes we got to remember that. Let me ask you this, Coach. Put on your Hubert Davis hat for a minute. Cliff Omoruyi's on campus later this week, tomorrow, Friday. I actually don't know the full duration of his visit. What's your pitch?
The biggest pitch for me right now is they've had success. Hubert's been there. He's been there as a player there. He's coached there. He's been in the NBA. You just need to trust me. Trust me that I know what I'm doing, that this has been a very successful program way before he was there, but it's also been something that he's kind of established his own kind of presence now in 3 years, and he's kind of doing things his own way. But when it comes down to it, it's the Carolina system, and now you've got to develop that personal relationship with him. You got to trust me as your mentor, and I can take you and make you the very best that you can be and get you to that next level.
Man, well, hopefully that's the pitch that sells it. And hopefully, I would love it if that's the pitch Hubert made. If you just got inside his brain right there, and that's what he actually says to Cliff Omoruyi. But yeah, man, just being around and seeing it all, hopefully that will do it. I know Tuscaloosa is a great college town, but I think, man, Chapel Hill and what they've got going there, and Hubert is such a good recruiter, Coach. I really just think he's going to be able to slam the door on this thing. And also, I would frankly just like to beat Alabama after having just lost to them in the tournament and after losing to them last year in Portland. I'm so tired of losing to the Crimson Tide. Can we just win one thing against them? For crying out loud, bring it home, Tar Heels. Let's get this thing. Now, Coach, want to have a little fun here. There's been lots of roster speculation. That's just what we've been doing almost ad nauseum throughout this entire transfer portal season. So I want to move to a fun game of what if. And I want to ask the question, and we're going to unpack this. What if North Carolina lands both of these transfers we've talked about today, both Cliff Omoruyi and Adou Thiero? What would that mean for the Tar Heels? What would be the strengths and the weaknesses? We'll get to it in just a second. Right after I tell you about Monopoly Go. All right, game off, timeout. We got to pause here to talk more about Monopoly Go. And I know what you're saying. Isaac, come on, flag on the play. You already talked about that multiple times the past couple of weeks. But honestly, there's so much good stuff in this game that we got to keep talking about it more. In Monopoly Go, not only do you play against your friends, but you can team up with them for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much to get. How about this? Unique stickers that you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes. Cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with. Hilarious emojis that you can use to taunt your friends when you smash their buildings. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. And a bunch of those include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot machine. And there's always new timed events to help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. So there's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench, go download it now free on Google Play or the App Store. All right, game on. On yesterday's show, we went negative with the what if. I asked the question and tried to answer it. What if Carolina doesn't land either Jonas Adou, which they didn't, or Cliff Omoruyi? And we unpacked that. So today I want to reward your negative listening efforts with a positive spin. So coach, what if North Carolina adds, that's a weird way to say that. What if Carolina adds both Cliff Omoruyi and Adou Thiero? What would be the strengths, the weaknesses that from various lineups and combinations and things like that? So, coach, let's start with strengths. If North Carolina, which has already added Cade Tyson, along with, we're still assuming RJ Davis and Elliot Cadeau, what if they also add Cliff Omoruyi and Adou Thiero? Strengths, ready, set, go.
Yeah, we need Cliff to be able to bring that presence inside and give us some length, some shot blocking, some rim protector, some just be able to get the rebounding back to where we need it to be with Armando gone. It's going to make practice just an absolute war. And that's what you want as a coach. You want guys having to compete every day. You can't take a day off. You can't take a drill. You can't take a minute off because every second counts. So you're fighting for position all the time. And to be competitive against other people, you got to be competitive among yourselves. If practice isn't very competitive, then the guys aren't fighting very hard for their spot. Then they're not going to be they're not going to max out the potential of the team. So length is going to be there. Athleticism is going to be there. It's going to give them the ability to, if you have a rim protector, you can get out in the passing lanes. You can pressure the ball. You can trap a little bit more. I'd love to see him trap some ball screen stuff and really get after. I don't necessarily believe in that full court pressure is really a big deal anymore, but I'd love to see them really pressure the ball more in the half court. You can do that if you have a rim protector back there.
I mean, Coach, you're talking about rim protection. I was just looking back at both of their numbers last year. Last year, Omoruyi averaged 2.9 blocks a game, Thiero 1.1. So combined, these two dudes, which in this scenario is probably Carolina's starting front court, combined to average 4 blocks a game last year. I'll take that rim protection all day long. And Thiero, from every report I've heard, is still growing and learning his body. And so, hey, we'll take every bit of that. Coach, I mean, I would think, goodness, the defensive potential for this team, because like you and I and everyone else talked about this all season long, how much defense was a staple for last year's team. Armando really, really played defense better than he ever had in his career. Obviously, Seth Trimble, what a great individual defender. And you think about adding that athleticism you were just talking about with these two guys to Seth Trimble, and I doubt we'd see him in the starting lineup, but we're going to see some combinations of that. You think about Drake Powell, who's calling card as an incoming freshman as defense, and, RJ, who buckles down and does it. I think is an underrated defender, although albeit a little bit small. You've got all these pieces, and you think about the length and athleticism of a Jalen Withers, and I know a lot of these guys wouldn't be all out there at the same time, but I'm just saying there's a lot of lethal defensive possibilities if you add Cliff Omoruyi and Adou Thiero.
Yeah, RJ's hands are unbelievable. I mean, you can talk about his size all you want, but he gets his hands on everything. He can just be a pest defensively. And I think Elliot can be a good defender as well when he wants to be too. But the athletes are going to be, especially the length. Drake Powell, his highlights are just his athleticism, his ability to guard. And when you get people like that, it gets contagious. Because once you get one guy who gets a steal and gets a leak out and gets a dunk, then the next guy wants to do it. And then Seth's in the passing lane, and then somebody else gets a steal. And then it just can create havoc and can create the pace that I think he really wants to play.
Coach, let's flip it. I'm sure we could continue talking strengths. Let's flip it to weaknesses. In this hypothetical, let me give you a starting lineup of Elliot, Cadeau, RJ Davis, Cade, Tyson, Adou, Thiero, and Cliff Omoruyi. What do you see as some weaknesses if these guys both commit to Carolina?
Is there enough three-point threats in that lineup? Obviously, Elliot's going to get better, I think. I think he's a good shooter. I've seen him make shots in practice and in pickup games. I think it was just a confidence thing. I think being a sophomore is going to be a huge deal. They're going to put their best guard defender on RJ and not let him, be able. He's going to have to use his length, his ability to create space, his ability to shoot from range, from NBA range and beyond. And Cade Tyson's got to be able to prove that he can make shots. And if he can't, we're going to be back in the same situation. You won't have a Harrison Ingram who can still make the three from that 4 spot. So that would be one of the concerns I would have. Cade Tyson, key there.
Yeah. And Coach, I'm with you. I think that is my biggest weakness concern with that lineup is Thiero can make threes, but has not yet prolifically done so at the collegiate level. And Cliff Omoruyi is not going to be a 3-point shooting threat, right? Like that's not his game. And so that means that critically, Elliot, you just referenced it, has to take a sophomore jump. RJ's going to do what RJ's going to do. And we expect Tyson to do it, but is it there? And it's not like there's a bunch of dudes coming off the bench that are firing down threes. Seth had a good percentage last year, but low volume. Jalen Withers had a good percentage at Louisville, but didn't show it this past year. Jalen Washington certainly can. We just haven't seen it a ton, and some of that is his minutes played. And Ian Jackson has started to develop more of a shot, an outside shot. Drake Powell can do it, but it's like there's just not typically a lot of hope and trust in freshmen to be able to shoot well from outside. Jared McCain from Duke, by the way, being a outlier to that this past year. Good grief, what a shooting year he had. So, yeah, Coach, I think those are the glaring strengths and weaknesses you would see in this what-if hypothetical lineup, which, by the way, I think it would be great to add both of these young men to Carolina. Now, Coach, I mentioned earlier that we're going to have you share something about what you are doing this weekend that might or might not have to do with mint juleps and crazy hats. What's going on in your world?
We've been invited to work security at the Kentucky Derby, the 150th edition of the Kentucky Derby this weekend. So we've bought blue blazers and red ties, and we've got a group of 20 going up on Thursday, and then we'll be there all day Friday and Saturday. Long days, but opportunity for our program to make some money. So never been there, never done it. We have no idea what we're going to be doing, but if anybody from the Discord's there, hit me up. I'd love to be able to catch up with somebody.
That would be incredible. Also, we're going to need stories next week, Coach. So surely there will be some shenanigans or wild, because I'm sure you're going to see people in sightings and stuff. So go ahead. Sorry.
One of the areas I don't know exactly where, but they told us one of the areas it costs $20,000 a ticket to get into our area. So they said, get ready to see anybody. And it made sure we understood that we cannot take pictures. We cannot ask for autographs. But we have no idea who we're going to see. So kind of exciting, a little nervous as, I want to make sure that my guys behave themselves and don't embarrass us. But it's going to be quite the weekend. So really looking forward to it.
Okay. Very seriously, we need a report back next week. I know everyone's going to be waiting on that. All right, gang, fun conversation. Again, the transfer portal closes today, Wednesday, May 1st. And so no more will be entering today, although there typically is a little bit of a slow leak as more information comes out, as paperwork is filed and finished and all that. So we might still hear a few names tomorrow, Thursday, or even Friday, but the main flood of names should be over after today. That's it for today's episode, by the way. Thanks so much for joining us. If you aren't subscribed to Locked On Tar Heels on audio and video, do it. It's so easy. Just hit subscribe on your favorite audio platform. If you're watching on YouTube, just hit that little subscribe button down there and make sure you hit that bell so that you get a notification when I go live after breaking news comes along or whatever it is. If you're not part of the Locked On Tar Heels Discord community, man, you're missing out on that as well. Come for the Tar Heels. Stay for the community. The link is in the show notes and it's free to join. We'd love to have you. Want to remind you that it's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll be right back here with you tomorrow with Coach Pat Kilby. That'll be fun. But until then, peace.